Welcome to The Impact Equation, conversations with leaders shaping a brighter future. With me, Adam Pike.
And me, Rafi Addlestone. With our special guests, we unlock the secrets of those who dare to transform our world. We talk to architects of change, pioneers in their fields, working towards a brighter future for us all. In each episode, we dig into each element of the impact equation.
Today, we're joined by Branwen Evans, a leader in housing and social policy over the past 2 decades. A former civil servant, Branwen has held senior roles at the Department for Communities and Local Government and the Homes and Communities Agency, focusing on housing strategy and community development.
Now, Branwen's at Places for People, one of the UK's biggest social enterprises, managing over 245,000 homes and investing millions into building communities. Branwen's work focuses on how Places for People can change lives every day, creating homes and thriving communities. Branwen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So we'd love to start with you and your personal background. What was it about where you grew up and your family, or the TV you watched and the books that you read, that led to you wanting to commit to a career in impact?
So I grew up in Anglesey in North Wales, and I could see from my bedroom window, I was really lucky, I could see across the Menai Straits and Snowdonia. So just a really beautiful setting, just totally immersed in nature. So I started life taking for granted that, there were mountains and beautiful fields everywhere you went. And I was really lucky. And what I realised as I grew older is that actually that's not the case, and that nature and our environment is so precious to me to look after it. And I was reflecting on one of my really early memories, which I don't know why my parents let me watch this, but they let me watch the Watership Down cartoon, where if you remember it, there's at the beginning, there's actually quite a violent scene where the rabbits are happily in their warren and the builders come and they churn up the ground and the rabbits have to escape. And that was really seared on my memory. Probably shouldn't have watched that at that age, but it really did make a deep impression. I think also at that time I was all for the rabbits, and as I've got older I realised that also people do need homes and development is important, and it's that balance. So that really early memory still kind of feels like it's a day-to-day thing. How do we get that balance? And I guess also it's one of those things you learn as you get older, isn't it? There's no right answer. There's no black and white. It's not right to build or it's not right to save the environment. We have to work out how we do all these things and push forward together.
From Anglesey, take us from Watership Down to Whitehall. What was the trajectory there?
So I went to university in Sheffield, which I think is a brilliant city. Really love it. And I studied law. I don't really remember, didn't learn much about law, obviously, but had a brilliant time. And I love Sheffield so much that I decided as soon as I graduated, I had to leave because I didn't want to spoil any of that time and any of those memories. So a friend and I moved to London. We rented a flat. We had no jobs, which is not a very wise thing to do. I didn't know as much then as I know now about the private rental sector and prices in London, but they were high even then, and it was not a wise move. So I applied for every job. And basically I applied for the Charity Commission, and they were quicker than Tesco's to get back to me. So that's why I went into government. It was not in any way sort of well thought through. It just happened. And then another job opportunity came up at the Office of the Deputy Prime Minister. So I applied for there. They came back and said, no, thanks. So then I moved house. The day I was moving house, a few weeks later, they sent another letter that arrived the day I was leaving. They said, actually, we've reconsidered. We would like you to come for an interview. And it was one of those really nice moments you think about. If I'd moved house a day earlier or the letter had arrived a day later, I probably never would have moved to that department and got into housing.
So if it was unintended to begin with, what is it about your values or what drives you that has meant that you've stuck in housing and social policy rather than doing something different?
So what I love about working in housing is it really matters and everybody understands it. And I can have a conversation with anybody about housing and find something that they're interested in or that matters to them. Most of us either live in a house or want to live in a house or some sort of home. A home is really important, and we have views about what that should be like, how we can afford it. We now see so many people are spending so much of their income on housing costs that they can't do other things. So it really is that bedrock, and also how we bring all the houses together and make places. If we do that badly, it just drives so many different outcomes. I could talk to my granny about it. I'd go home and say, trying to build more houses. And she was like, oh yeah, I get that. I've worked in other public policy areas like local government finance, which I think is really important, is another bedrock. If you go and try and talk to a granny about local government finance, I'm telling you now, forget it, basically. Then no one cares.
Branwen, it'd be great to understand from you, so what is the housing crisis? Why is it so bad? What are the big components? How do you break it down as a set of problems, really?
Yeah, I think part of the thing is it's almost got so big that we're a bit confused about like where to go with it all. And I would say it's a bit like that film, Everything Everywhere All at Once. You have to do a lot of things. We've got ourselves into a position we need to do a lot of things. So I went to Bristol and spoke to some of our teams there who provide specialist housing support for women who are fleeing domestic violence with children, and talking to them about the housing market in Bristol, where it's really hard, Bristol. So we're talking about all these problems, and I was trying to get to sort of like, these are symptoms. Where do you get to the problem behind it? I do think a lot of it is the market is broken. So you can't say to these landlords, the private landlords, well, you're charging a ridiculous amount of money for a very poor product. Like if you're in a shop and someone said, it's going to be £1,000 for a new electric toothbrush, you'd be like, okay, well, other toothbrushes are available. You can't do that. If your child is in school in Bristol, they're settled, or if they've got special needs that you've just worked out with that school, you're not just going to up sticks and move to, the north of England or something. You're invested in that community. Your family, your support network might be there, but you have no choices. And so I think the lack of good, affordable homes is really sort of, that is the starting point, because unless you can change those market factors, it's a real problem. Then we do just need lots of different types of homes, and we do need more affordable homes. And I think when you look at the fact, the last figures in October, London boroughs are spending £4 million a day on temporary accommodation. That's insane. Like, I think if I had £4 million a day to spend on building or improving our homes, like, I could get a lot done. But obviously, in the meantime, what do you do with those families living in that accommodation? So that is a massive problem. Government is now spending, they've sort of flipped. You used to spend a lot of money on what we called asset subsidy, which is basically where you put money into housing. And they put it instead what's called people subsidy. So that is basically housing benefit that moves with the person. Sounds pretty good, but it basically means all that money is going into the private rented sector. That's now billions of pounds for government. So they need to kind of control those costs. That's understandable. If they control those costs, but there's still not enough homes, prices still go up. So what you're seeing is people have got rents going up. I think it's nearly 10% rents have gone up recently. It's just such a lot. People aren't getting pay rises of 10%. So there's your rent. Government is holding down your subsidy to help you pay that rent. How do you make all your sums add up on your budget? You just can't. And so that's people in the private rent sector really struggling. We know people in our sector are really struggling because the people coming into social and affordable rented homes now, the only people who can get these homes are people who are really vulnerable. So we know that the demographics, like the people who are living in our homes, are more vulnerable and need more support.
So the housing crisis is so broad and it affects so many different types of people. Can you break down for us the sort of the categories of people that it affects? So from the most in need all the way through to sort of people, trying to rent because they can try and get their first job like you were in moving to London. Can you sort of help us understand the categories of the challenge?
Yeah, I think the costs of housing are affecting so many people. So you've got people who are sort of graduating from university in their first jobs, often moving to where the jobs are and sort of in cities, often the southeast, facing really high rents. So they are looking at rents that just keep escalating away. Then you've got families who maybe formed a family, so a lot of people still stuck living at home. But if they try and get their own house, how do they then make it all stack up? So this is where it can be a real challenge in terms of, I think some people, they make it all work and then they have children, and then those childcare costs on top of the housing costs will just blow the whole budget up. What we have seen, sadly, is real increases in people fleeing domestic abuse, women specifically. And in those cases, and that is why we have the number of officially homeless people in this country, more so than any other country by international examples, are women. And I think that a lot of that is because when families break down and you just have a single earner in that family, it is almost impossible for them to meet the housing costs. So then you have people who are homeless with children living in really poor quality accommodation and often in temporary accommodation for many years. I think that's why we've got 160,000 children living in temporary accommodation. I do also worry that we've got an ageing population. So we know that we've got people in places, people homes, who are getting older all the time. And if you think we've got 70,000 affordable homes, we've got a very small number compared to that of older people's accommodation. So what we're going to have is more and more old people with needs who are in normal accommodation. And I don't yet see how we're going to make that work in terms of adapting all those homes. If you ask local authority for aids and adaptations to a home, you can be waiting years, sadly. So we try and step in.
So bring it back to what you're doing today. Before we get into what places people are doing, what is the social housing sector, affordable housing sector? What does that mean? Who does it include? And what are the sort of the requirements around providing social housing?
So originally, social housing was provided by councils, and that basically it's funded by government. They built houses that they then provided at lower cost for people who couldn't afford a standard house. And originally, it was open to a lot of people. And after the war, we saw a huge explosion in council house building by councils. Over time, councils couldn't afford to do as much of that. So what we have now is called the registered provider or housing association, which are sort of charities or private social enterprise companies who come in and basically do a deal with government that we'll build so many homes, you help us by funding some of it, and we'll borrow some money and we'll also fund it. So it's just enabled us as a country to build many more homes at rents that are more affordable for people. But over time, as there are fewer and fewer homes available and prices have gone up, the demand for these homes at lower rents has increased dramatically. So now in order to get into these homes, you have to be really in need. But that means there's a huge range of people who are just above what we call really, really needy, who can't get access to them.
And Branwen, could you share more about what Places for People is and a part of the problem that you're trying to solve?
So Places for People is a social enterprise, and we do a range of things. But one of our core activities is providing social, sort of affordable homes. We've got nearly 70,000 homes which are provided at that rent that is below the market rate. So it helps people who couldn't otherwise afford housing.
Before we go dive into the housing, tell us a bit more about the other stuff that you do. So, some of our listeners might be customers of yours outside of the housing space.
Yeah, we also manage other homes for other clients and private rented sector homes. And we also work with local authorities to provide health and leisure services. We manage over 100 leisure centres, including the first this year, we've got the biggest passive house leisure centre in the world, which we're really proud of.
What is a passive house leisure centre?
It's a leisure centre that basically meets the passive house principles, and they've just really put in loads of solar and just thought about how that whole system works to get the leisure centre sort of performing really brilliantly.
The sort of brand name around the leisure centres, that's Better Health, Better Gyms. There's one near me in Finchley Lido. We go there all the time. A fantastic service. So well done, Place for People. Okay, so into the housing piece. So tell us a bit about the 70,000 homes that you operate. Who do they serve? What are the challenges that you have in terms of trying to run such a massive estate of housing?
Yeah, so we've got 70,000 properties, and they're all over England and Scotland. And generally they are in communities, some are a bit more dispersed. But what we try and do is we've been working really hard to do what we call asset surveys, which sound really boring, but it's basically like a housing MOT. So we get people to go around and make sure that we're really thinking about and understand basically what is going on in those 70,000 homes, what is the state of their kitchens, their bathrooms, all their infrastructure. And that links to how we think about how we can then improve those homes, which is really important when we come on to thinking about energy efficiency for the homes. And we've also been thinking about our model. So we have a new model where we have community housing managers who come out, and they also try and build that personal relationship with all of our customers and understand what's going on. And what we've been doing, so we've been looking at the houses and also looking at our customers and thinking about who is in our homes, do some what we call segmentation work, which is really understanding those sort of different vulnerabilities that people have. And what that means is, like, a lot of our customers, they're fine, right? They just want to pay their rent, have their house looked after, and get on with their lives and not have us interfering all the time. And you've got a really small number of customers who are really struggling, who maybe can't access services, don't know where to go for help, won't ask for help if they need it. So what this insight enables us to do is think about what are the homes that need the most support and input, and how do we get that into our asset programme in a logical way, and who are the customers who need the most support, and how do we target on that. And that's because the reality is, in 70,000 homes and the money we get from the government, if you try and do everything for everybody, you are going to fail. And we really need to think about where can we get the best bang for our buck to help people.
Could you share with us more around the social interventions there? Because that's really fascinating, because obviously there are homes, but as you say, you want to keep people in their homes, and there might be some challenges in people's lives that make that difficult. So am I right in saying that Places for People also intervene or act in some ways as social workers? Could you sort of bring that to life for us a bit?
Yeah, so we do. We try and not overstep our boundaries, but it is getting increasingly difficult, because what we've seen is that the health services and local authorities are under increasing pressure. They haven't got any money. So as they step back, we kind of have to step in. And I think what we do is sometimes it's really small things. So before Christmas, for our Hounslow scheme, we got together and we did things called warm packs. So just got some of the senior leaders all got together and spent an afternoon packing bags of things like blankets, a little teddy bear in the kids' pack, warm jumpers, draft excluders. It's what everyone wants for Christmas, isn't it? A draft excluder. But just like a little pack of things just to give people a little boost to make their homes a bit more comfortable. Through to, we have people moving to our homes with nothing. And we do basically, then we get our Places Impact involved, and they will sort out washing machines, fridges, freezers, whatever. And then we try not to be, a lot of people in our homes, it's an increasing problem across the country, have mental health problems. And we just need to think about how can we intervene where there are safeguarding issues and sort of try and get people to support they need. And one thing we have seen a massive increase in, which is really sad to see the pictures, is hoarding. And you just look at these homes. I don't even know how people are getting in the door to take photos, and they go in the homes. It's just full of rubbish, and it is so sad people are living like that.
Just to dig into that a bit more, Branwen, so where does your support sort of end? And I guess, is there an ambition to extend that level of support? Because you mentioned that you can only go so far, but once you have that trusted relationship with someone in their home, there seems like there's enormous opportunity there. So I'd just love to understand where it ends, so to speak, and what the potential could be, and if that's something that Places for People have ever considered.
Yeah, so our ambition would be to step more into that space and do more and work closely with other providers like healthcare services to get people the help they need. And what we find is, if you go into somebody's home, and we have this motto, do the right thing, and we say, you might be a gas engineer. If you work for us, you go and do a gas check, and you see there's a problem, your job as our employee is to flag that problem. You're not there just to do the gas check. You're there to look after our customers. Gas check might be 90% of your job that day. If you see something else, pick it up. So we're in a really privileged position to get into people's homes, or if people won't let you do a gas check, like that in itself, if somebody refuses to have a gas check 3 times, I'm like, what's going on here that you don't want us to come into your house? That's an alarm bell. So it's a really privileged position to see what's going on in someone's home and to call out if there's problems, but we can't financially do everything.
It's so fascinating because when you talk to doctors, for example, often ones with more experience will talk about asking people about their circumstances rather than their specific symptom. And often that tells you more about the individual in this situation than perhaps the symptom might tell you in order to actually address it. And I was thinking, the role that Amazon delivery drivers can play in connecting up the dots, the role of Royal Mail when they knock on the door and an old lady who hasn't come to the door for a couple of days, what role they play. But it feels like we live in such an atomized way that opportunity is lost. So I would certainly personally be very excited about seeing Places for People doing more there, because I don't think that model exists, and that's just hugely exciting. But Rafi, over to you.
One way into this, I suppose, is like there's a buzzword, I think you mentioned a couple of times that, Branwen, like place-based impact. And that's something that's flown around. And I think people maybe don't understand that as a concept. Like, what do we mean by place-based impact? And why is it a good way of sort of organising ourselves?
Yeah, I think, and everything happens in a place, doesn't it? I think it's that simple, really. And in your house, that's where everything comes together. So if somebody cannot get out and they cannot engage with any services in any other way, and we have to take the services to them, that is there. But also it is where your community, isn't it? I think we saw in COVID, it doesn't matter if you've got a friend at the other end of the country who wants to help you. It's your neighbour 2 doors down who will maybe think, you seem a bit sad today. I've, dropped some cheese off on your door or whatever it is. It's a weird insight into my community. Yeah. But it is that going on the school run, going to the playground, building up all those connections. And I think that's where you can really help people. I think if we're looking at mental health crisis, so much of that, the answer to that is about how you're connecting, how you're building up those relationships, and where people are withdrawing from that and sort of getting lost in society. How do we sometimes bring that out? But also, do we keep it healthy in the first place? And I don't think it literally comes down to, when we build a place, you have to build it right. You have to build in playgrounds that are safe and, supervised, we call it by. So if you build a playground somewhere random behind some big walls, no one's going to feel safe going there. Whereas if you put it in the middle of a sort of circle of houses where people can feel it's what they call sort of gentle surveillance. So you're safe because the people in the houses will see if something happens. So it's hardwiring all those things in, hardwiring in nature. So you've got ponds, sustainable drainage is all built in, and just cycleways and walkways. How we get that design right from the very beginning dictates so much.
So you mentioned there some of the sort of climate challenges. Maybe we sort of flip to that. I suppose there's two angles here. There's first of all the idea of climate justice. So we talk about climate justice typically as a global problem, but actually it's a local problem too. It'd be great to take your perspective on that, and then we can talk about your own sustainability journey at Places for People and some of the work we're doing together.
Yeah, I think all the stats show that the customers that we have in our properties, they are going to have a massive impact from climate change and benefit the least from the lots of measures that are currently happening. So I do really worry about that justice point. And I think it is really important that we think about, how do we take energy efficiency and the measures that you might do. If you owned a home, it's easy, isn't it? I'll put solar PV on the roof and I'll get an air source heat pump and you kind of control it. So how do we help our customers? And somebody said to me, the thing is, Branwen, our customers are just worrying about how they're going to eat. So they're not really worried about this climate change stuff. And I just totally disagree with that, because it turns out that they do care. Our customers have the same values and worries for the future and for their children and their children's future as anybody would. And I was really encouraged. Recently, we published our new ESG strategy and we went and talked to a customer group about this. And these customers came along and they were just brilliant, well-informed, passionate. They had great questions, really hard to answer questions, which I thought was a good thing. So I think our customers do believe and care about this stuff. And it's a really important role for us to sort of navigate through, that just because you're vulnerable or living in poverty doesn't mean these things don't matter, and that we need to keep fighting for this to be part of that agenda. And then very specifically, get their homes more energy efficient and make the changes so they actually can see the difference. And one final thing I would share on this is, when somebody comes to rent one of our houses, we have to do an affordability check to make sure you go through all their income and things so they can afford the rent, essentially. And we had some homes in Nottingham, so not central London, not somewhere with a really hot housing market. And the energy bills on that property were what made it unaffordable, because it was more than the rent. And I just thought it's so terrible. Like, all the affordable housing maths that the government does to provide these homes is based on taking the heat out of your budget by reducing rent. But now energy costs are so out of control that they're putting even really modestly priced houses out of people's reach.
One of the big problems that you've got as a housing association with a big stock of houses is how to upgrade the stock to be towards net zero, to decarbonise. Why is that difficult? And then do you want to talk about what we're doing to try and address it?
The most simple reason it's difficult is because of money. And I just think if we had enough money, we could fix it, right? If we could get this, you need skills. We're training people. That's all in hand. We need to know how to do it. That's all in hand. And if it was a couple of homes, right, we could do it. And people like, oh, here's a house we've decarbonised. I'm like, yeah, that's great. That's not the problem. We know how to do it. What we don't know how to do is to do that to 70,000 homes quickly, because you need more skills, more supplies and more money to get that done. And so we've been thinking, how do you get to scale? How do you basically look at different finance models, bring in different partners and making that magic happen for more people, more fast? So one of the things we're doing is we're working with Pineapple and just thinking about different companies and how do we bring them together? How do we bring the strengths of different organisations together to collaborate and unlock a different finance model that will get these benefits to homes faster?
I'm with you, but it sounds like a model that could scale, not just Places for People, but to other housing-related organisations. How might that happen?
sometimes I think we've just got to get on and do it, to be honest. I think, we've spent a lot of time thinking, a lot of time bringing together the data, and what we've seen in Hounslow, we're getting that model together now. We're starting to look at how we operationalise that. So I think from that, what we need to do is just take that data and tell the story about what can be achieved through this, what it means for and is that balance again. It's not just about being good for the planet, it's really good for people. Because if you look at these homes, people living in them, if you can't afford to heat and eat, then actually somebody coming along and saying you're basically going to have almost cheap energy. And it's not just about that. Lots of these people, it's not just about getting cheaper energy. They're not spending money on energy now. So they are living in cold conditions. Kids are going out in the evenings because they don't want to stay home. So they're not doing their homework. The whole quality of life for people living in these homes could be transformed. So why wouldn't you want that for more of your homes? And I think what we need to do in terms of scale is be really clear on those benefits, be really clear on how it can be delivered. And I think there's this view that there's going to be some magic bullet that's going to come and fix all these problems. I just think it's going to be hard graft over the next 5 to 10 years. Let's get this done.
Absolutely. That's the ambition. So obviously we're working together on this project in Hounslow, and we brought together as Pineapple, which is where I work, a consortium of providers from delivery and technology with British Gas Centrica, and supported by financiers like NatWest, and working with Places for People to really model this opportunity. Basically, the way it works is borrowing against the future revenue streams of energy generation and the savings of doing retrofit in order to finance the installation of these solutions of solar panels and batteries and heat pumps on all the rest. And what is amazing about Places for People is the scale you operate at. And we're doing this in Hounslow, and the ambition is to take it out across the estate. And then also Places for People as a leader in the sector and as an enabler of procurement for the sector, taking this model and scaling it more broadly. And that's what we're aiming to do together. It is really pioneering, and that makes it challenging. And that makes it new and exciting. What are your sort of hopes and ambitions for the future, Branwen, both in terms of this model that we're doing together, but more broadly for the sector?
I just think we need to be brave, and we need to show. I think if we can show things work, that would create a bit of confidence. So like my personal ambition in the next sort of 2 to 3 year time frame is that we're Places for People, we're brave, we do this stuff, we work with partners as much as we can, and we show that it works. And I think there's nothing as powerful as a customer getting up there and saying, they did this, it was awesome, because me saying it, that's something. A customer saying it happened and I love it, that would give other people, I just want to give other people that confidence to move forward. And I just think we need to start getting everything behind it. So I think we've just got to build as a sector. And my biggest fear, it's not what you asked, is it's the opposite, but is that everyone just gets so with the economic climate and government obviously struggling to put money into these things, that people let that suck the energy out of them. So I think if we do nothing else, we just have to keep our heads up and keep going at this and keep talking about it and keep telling people why it's important.
And it is important, and the scale of the opportunity is huge, both from an impact perspective. 5 million homes, social housing in this country, and that's a lot of work to be done. And there's a lot of work to be done both for people and to make their lives better, and for the environment to reduce emissions, but also for the providers. It's a big business opportunity as well. So on that basis, I'm really hopeful that there is a real scale opportunity here, and we can deliver something really exciting and big in the market. Final question from me, Branwen. If you had a magic wand and you could say to the new government or future governments, this is what we need, more than just more money, more than just, more clarity of future direction, which is always what we need, what would your magic wand bring us?
I would love to see government actually say some bold things themselves. I think they've stepped back on a lot of ambitions. That's not right. And the market cannot mobilise behind that. And I think where we could really make a difference is skills. And I would love to see, the dream for me would be somebody in our homes, leaving school, going to one of our apprenticeships, learning to fix heat pumps, and then still living in our communities, getting into a different home, but still in our communities, but being the person who goes around, fixes heat pumps, helps fit new ones. And then you've just got that really magical thing where you're creating a job and an economic opportunity that links to what you want to do with your homes and enables us as a country to have the skills to really develop and move these things forward, because we can't fit these products until we can fix them. So it is really important.
Well, Branwen, thank you so much. It's been a tour de force over the housing crisis and agenda and what Places for People do and what you've been doing there. So thank you so much for joining us and for a really terrific conversation.
Thank you, Branwen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Beautiful conversation with Branwen. Adam, reflections, please.
So the things that stood out for me in that conversation were be brave and be bold. So a real kind of call to action, not to stick with the status quo, but to do something different. And then also just a call to like get your hands dirty. It's rare to hear that from a policy person because often we think in a policy context that this problem can be solved by more thinking. But this is one of those rare instances. And I see it all the time in healthcare and social policy that actually, no, get your hands dirty, get stuck in, get people on board and figure it out as you go along. And I really like that. And the other thing for me is that Places for People are enormous. And so the scale opportunities are enormous. And so I really hope that the learning and lessons of what's happening with the Places for People and those they're working with are lessons that can be shared and rolled out to other significantly sized housing providers. So those are a couple of very quick reflections, other than having learned a lot about housing in the space of an hour conversation, which I didn't know before. So thanks, Raf. Over to you. What do you think?
Places for People are an incredible organisation, making a real tangible impact in this country, doing it at scale. And that's why we're really excited to be working with them. Let me just give maybe a bit of background to our listeners on Pineapple Partnerships. We're a think-do consultancy. We have two sides of our business. There's a impact and sustainability strategy house, and we work with people trying to do system change, organizations and businesses leaders trying to do system change and think about strategy and choice making for impact at scale. And then we have a venture builder, and the venture builder forms commercial partnerships for sustainability, working with big enterprises and innovators to try and solve value chain wide challenges or complex challenges like in housing. And so our most mature venture is a solution for social housing, and Places for People are our first customer and like supporter and enabler. And what this solution is a combination of scaled delivery of technology. So we work with British Gas to provide and install heat pumps, solar panels, batteries. Innovators that provide sort of software and financing solutions that enable you to track the benefits of those using those solutions, and then to borrow against the future revenue that the housing association will gain through the energy generated by the solar panels and by the savings in how the assets will be run. That allows them to then borrow to then pay for these interventions upfront. And so we created this model. It's called Pineapple Homes, and Places for People are our first and supportive customer. And it's an incredible organisation to work with, led by visionary CEO Greg Reed and by Branwen, who is one of the brains behind the operation. And they really are really passionate about not just changing their own asset base and their own stock and really decarbonising it and making it a better place for their customers to live in, but also changing the system, changing the market, changing the sector, and finding a way for the rest of the housing associations in this country and local authorities and others to have access to decarbonising tools, despite the fact that the public and finance environment is challenging, because there's a commercially viable business model underneath it. So that's what we'll be doing with Pineapple Homes, and that's why we're working with Places for People, and that's why I'm delighted to be working with Branwen, who is a hero generally, but also a real advocate for what we're doing in this programme. So really pleased to be able to get her on and be able to talk about that.
Rafi, it might be worth actually you guys coming back maybe in 6 months and 12 months and actually taking a deep dive into that project.
Definitely. It's got quite a bit of traction. We were mentioned in a UN SDG partnership report last week.
Oh, wow.
It's got a bunch of news exposure over the course of our development, and we're doing a pilot in Hounslow, as Branwen mentioned, that maybe it'd be great to come back and talk about how that went when it's finished.
Yeah, I'd love to. Amazing. Well, until next time on that basis, Rafi.
Thank you. Yeah. Until next time.